Welcome back in, Minnesota sports fans. It's been a week off, but we're back around here at the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Will Ragatz and Joe Nelson for Vikings on SI right here on Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. Make sure to hit subscribe. Does help us get found. Also helps you get notified every time we post a new video. Boys, we've got a lot to talk about here in the world of the Minnesota Vikings. A big win last night against the Colts on Sunday Night Football. So let's get started before we jump into some of the topics about or discussions about the trade deadline coming up tomorrow as well. Will, let's get your thoughts on what you saw last night at US Bank Stadium.
Yeah, it was, a game where kind of on a play-to-play overall stat sheet basis, the Vikings were clearly the better team. They were somewhat dominant at home with yards and time of possession, and they avoided a lot of those pre-snap penalties that hurt them and really seemed to clean up some things from those two losses in 5 days against the Lions and the Rams. It helped clearly that they weren't facing a team as good as either of those groups. Joe Flacco making that decision by the Colts to bench Anthony Richardson look a little odd after how he played on Sunday night. I don't really know what the point of that was, but the Vikings did what they were supposed to do at home against a team that is not as good as them. It's probably not going to be a playoff team. And if it weren't for a bunch of kind of catastrophic, disastrous plays, a couple bad Sam Darnold interceptions, a fumble return for a touchdown that maybe should have been a roughing the passer flag, this game wouldn't have been as close as it was. But give credit to the Vikings for, they were down 7-0 at halftime. Will Reichard had missed first two kicks of his career. The vibes weren't great. Nothing was really going well, but they stuck with it, came out in the third quarter, went touchdown drive, stop, touchdown drive, and we're able to hold on and get one more score there in the fourth quarter to kind of put it away. So it was a win that they really needed, to bounce back. If they had lost 3 in a row, we'd be having a much different conversation here today. Sky would kind of feel like it was fallen, but to get to 6-2, they stay within one game of the Lions in the North. I think they have to be feeling pretty good about where they are, especially with this little road trip looking fairly doable against Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Chicago.
I was, the big takeaway for me. There's two angles that I can't get out of my mind, and one is how Garrett Bradbury and Ed Ingram just can't handle big beef eaters on the interior defensive line. These guys are getting shoved backwards. It's basically the same thing that happened against the Giants in the playoffs, 2 years ago when the Vikings win 13 games and then Dexter Lawrence just eats them for lunch, And this is a concern. I mean, Dalton Reisner was active last night. He had the questionable label. He keeps telling everybody that he's been healthy for a lot longer than anybody knows. But the Vikings have not put him in there at right guard. And, it's raising a lot of red flags, I think, because maybe the Vikings don't think Reisner's an actual upgrade over Ingram. And if that's the case, you have Ingram as your top right guard. And it's just not working out. We're 3 years into this project, and he keeps getting absolutely blown backwards or run around by bigger, faster, stronger athletes on the defensive side of the ball. That's a nightmare scenario because in the playoffs, we know that the Vikings are going to be playing interior D-lines that are ferocious. And then at the same time, as optimistic as I was about the defense, they didn't allow an offensive touchdown. And if it weren't for, a bad Sam Darnold interception and a late field goal where the Vikings were basically playing prevent defense, I mean, you basically pitched a shutout. But was it a product of the defense or was it a product of bad quarterback play from Joe Flacco? Because until that final drive when the Vikings had 3 sacks, it didn't seem or feel like they were getting a ton of pressure in Flacco's face. He just wasn't making throws or the receivers weren't making catches or getting open. I could be wrong about that. Maybe the Pro Football Focus grades will come back and say that Flacco was under constant duress. But from the eye test, I didn't think he was under all that much pressure, and he just wasn't doing what Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford did. So still a little bit concerned about the defense, even after a good statistical performance, and the interior offensive line has to have the Vikings shaking in their boots ahead of the trade deadline. I want to see them do something. I really do.
We'll for sure talk about that coming up. That's a good jumping point where you left off there, Joe, into where is your confidence level with this team at 6-2 now? Couple games ahead of them, as Will you pointed out, against very beatable teams. They could be 8-2 in a couple weeks' time. But after two losses to two good teams in the Lions and the Rams, they get a 21-13 win against the Colts. That was sloppy at times, as you guys have pointed out, but overall felt pretty dominating in aspects as well. Where's your confidence level with this team right now? Will, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's fairly high, I would say. I think we kind of have to. I mean, we've talked about this before, but not get too high, not get too low over the ebbs and flows of a football season. The Vikings, when they started 5-0, they weren't suddenly the best team in the league and gonna go 16-1 and cruise to the Super Bowl. But when they lose 2 games in 5 days to good teams, when the Rams are a good team, when they're healthy, they just beat the Seahawks to get back to 500. It wasn't as bad as it maybe looked or felt during that 5-day span either. This is a good playoff caliber football team that may not have the ultimate ceiling in this kind of transition year at quarterback with Sam Darnold, but I think still has the coaching and still has the roster talent up and down on both sides of the ball to be. I mean, I think they're going to win. I still think they're going to win 12 or 13 games this year, maybe, if things break right for them, if they win some close games with the way the schedule is, because it's just the talent. I mean, Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, they get TJ Hawkinson back. I like that they made the kind of win now move to bring in Cam Robinson at left tackle, and he gets the first game ball in the post-game locker room from Kevin O'Connell in this one. Defensively, I agree with Joe that as good as the numbers look on the stat sheet for the Vikings, it didn't always feel like a totally throttling defensive performance. I mean, the Colts couldn't get anything going in the run game, which was key. But, I mean, even though they had only, I think, a little over 200 yards, there were still some of those, Joe Flacco has all day in the pocket and can just rip a 18-yard in-breaking route into a soft spot in a zone. And it's like, I think the Vikings still need to clean some things up there, but they should maybe get Blake Cashman back this week, which I think would be big. It was encouraging to see Dallas Turner at least play a little bit more in this game. So my confidence level is pretty high. I think it wasn't as easy as it looked when they started 5-0, but they're still a good team despite those 2 losses. I think they're going to be in every game the rest of the way, and it still may come down to that Week 18 game at Detroit with a chance to potentially win the NFC North. Although Detroit might just never lose again. They look really good, but
yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, the Lions look ridiculously good. Oh, man. And everybody was talking about that game in the elements at Green Bay, like, oh, this is the first time Detroit and the only time Detroit will play in the elements this year. It didn't matter. Jared Goff put on a glove and sliced and diced the Packers. It just didn't matter. And the Packers are a really good team, and they were playing at home, and it had primetime feel to it as the 325 national game. And it just wasn't even close. They just whooped that butt. And then, going back to the Vikings here, they're in a great situation. I mean, they're a game behind Detroit. Detroit has a big one coming up, I believe, on Sunday night at Houston. If Houston can get just a little bit healthier, I don't know if Nico Collins is going to play or not, but if they can get a little bit healthier at home on primetime, they might sneak one by Detroit if Detroit's not fully ready for that one. That could be the door opening for the Vikings to get right back in that mix, because I don't see many losses, even a lot of lost potential on the upcoming schedule. I know the Vikings have 3 coming up on the road, but Jacksonville's not good. I know that they battled back against Philadelphia, but you watch Trevor Lawrence play, and you're just waiting for him to ruin the game. Tennessee's garbage. The Bears, the conversation on Monday morning in Chicago is all about DJ Moore when he was asked if Matt Eberflus has lost the locker room, and his quote was, "I want to say no." How's that for an endorsement? I mean, they seem to be falling apart. And then you get into December, and the Vikings ring 3 straight games in with Arizona, Atlanta, and Chicago. And, Arizona's pretty good. Atlanta's obviously very good. And Chicago here, I'm not too worried about on Monday night, but I don't think the Vikings lose any of those 6 games, or at the very least, they'll be favored in all 6 of those games. And that would take you all the way to Christmas. And if you win all 6 of those, you're looking at a team that's 12-2 and likely competing for home field advantage in the playoffs. And that could be absolutely critical as well. So you have to feel good about where the overall trajectory of this squad is, but you can't ignore the concerns with the defense and then the offensive line. Everywhere else, you got to feel pretty good about it outside of the full Sam Darnold experience, which is, you take away a couple of those bad passes last night, and the Colts were the latest victim to get absolutely bludgeoned by the Vikings. So stop hurting yourself, Sam, and this team could be very, very dangerous.
I want to talk.
I just think the Darnold thing is the main. It has to be the main point, right?
Yeah.
Like as good as he's looked at times this year, where he's ripping the ball to Jefferson and Addison and all these guys confidently and showing the arm talent and all the stuff that made him such a high pick. You also just get these periodic reminders, and they've happened more frequently in the last few games than they did in the first 4 or so, of why he's on his 4th or 5th team or whatever it is, and just the decision making, and it's like everyone's gonna always reference the seeing ghost thing that'll stick with him throughout his career, whether that's fair or not. But the first interception that he threw, it was picked off by the linebacker who had maybe the easiest play he'll ever have. But if he didn't get it, the cornerback was going to get it. Like it wasn't open at all, and it's like you just can't make that throw in that situation. And the second one was kind of the same thing. He has Jordan Addison streaking open downfield, as Jordan Addison's father definitely made note of on social media, and then he tries to rip the dagger to Jefferson, and there's a guy just waiting for it. And Kevin O'Connell said afterwards, the Vikings have thrived, and Darnold's thrived on those kind of concepts, those throws to Jefferson, and we saw it a bunch yesterday. But there are times when the defense is going to take it away, and you have to go to the next option. And if he would have done that, he would have seen Addison wide open, or he could have even checked it down in that situation. And that's the thing, is they just need a little bit more kind of play-to-play consistency from Darnold to avoid those mistakes. Another thing is he's got to be able to rip the check down quicker.
Yes.
At times when he, instead of trying to spin out of the pocket, and DeForest Buckner's right there, and now it's not a 7-yard sack, it's a 13-yard sack because I tried to get away. Over the last 2 games specifically, he must lead the league in 12-yard sacks taken, and it's just you have to avoid those plays, because then you're in 2nd and 22, or you're in 3rd and super long, and the whole drive is just kind of screwed. So the turnovers, the sacks, those things, if he can avoid those, overall, I mean, look at the stats. The guy's 4th in the league, I think, in passer rating still, behind like the Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen's and those kind of guys. He's playing really well. He just needs to avoid the catastrophic mistakes that really can set the Vikings back, and it can lose you games.
Yeah, I mean, he's got unlimited weapons. I mean, with Hawkinson back, that opened up things for Jordan Addison. It opened up things for Justin Jefferson. It opened up things for Josh Oliver. I mean, This is dangerous, man. And I loved what KOC said after the game at the podium. He's like, Sam Darnold can rip that pill. He called the football a pill. I just love it when football players get into their lingo and they really level with you. That should be exciting too to Vikings fans, because you have a head coach, when you're talking that way, it's not just cliche talk like I'm going to support my quarterback. He believes it. So if he can just clean up a few of those things that you just mentioned. And by the way, great story idea for Vikings on SI later. Let's find out how many yards Darnold has lost in the last 3 or 4 weeks on sacks, because it's ridiculous. We've gone from 3rd and 4s, or 2nd and 4s, to 3rd and 15s because he's getting dropped 10, 12 yards behind the line of scrimmage because he tries to spin out of it. I don't know why he's not stepping up in the pocket, or at least finding the check down. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's a bit of a panic button that comes with his play, and that is the full Sam Darnold experience, as you eloquently wrote about in the game recap last night, Will. So, yeah, I mean, you got to be excited, but there's an old military guy I remember on the radio. He once said he's terminally ill with pancreatic cancer, I believe, and he said, I wake up every single day with high aspirations but low expectations. And I think that's a really fair way to look at Sam Darnold. because he can burn you, man. And this Vikings team in general can burn you too, as we've experienced.
So is there a fix for Darnold, or is it just as you guys were talking about, just you have to ride this whole full Sam Darnold experience? Is it just him needing to clean it up, or is there stuff that Kevin O'Connell can do to help him out in the progressions, or is there something that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah can do at the trade deadline coming up, as we'll talk about, getting interior offensive line help? Is there a fix, or is it just hoping that Sam Darnold can clean up some of these things that have been dragging him down all these years, Will?
Yeah, I think it's to some extent you're always just gonna kind of have to ride the roller coaster with him. I think the Vikings will continue to, Kevin O'Connell will try to continue to coach him up and help him, and ideally make it a slightly less volatile ride. The high highs and the low lows were on full display on Sunday. They'd like to see him be a little more in the middle. And I mean, you want the high highs, but try to eliminate some of the super disastrous plays. And I think that can come with coaching. Continuing to kind of watch things with him in meetings and try to simplify it for him, make sure he's got some of these quick hitting options like Kevin O'Connell talked about last week. Help Darnold kind of learn from each interception. I mean, he's not a rookie quarterback, so to some degree he is kind of going to be who he is. But again, this is a great environment, a great system for him, great coaching staff. So I think there are some things you can do there. I don't know if they're going to go out and trade for a guard. I think we could see Dalton Reisner at some point, and that might just provide a little bit of a boost in pass protection. It's interesting to me maybe that we didn't see him last night, to be honest, but we shall see moving forward. I just think the offensive line, if it can just be good enough to give Darnold enough protection to do what he's been doing, find Jefferson, keep getting Addison really involved, because Addison seems like he's open a lot more than his season statistics would indicate. Hawkinson will continue to kind of get acclimated back to things, and I mean the run game even look they've got their number 2 running back now with Cam Akers. I think that's genuinely kind of an encouraging development. So I don't know that there's some magic fix, but it's just keep working at it, and you prefer to learn these lessons from last night in a win versus in a loss.
So let me throw this at you guys, because entering week 10, Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins have identical TD to interception ratios, 17 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, I believe is the case. I firmly believe that the ceiling with this Vikings roster with Sam Darnold is higher than it would be with Kirk Cousins. The one thing that Sam has is that escapability. And even though he rolls to his left on Sunday night and throws a phantom interception to a linebacker who's just standing there like nobody's ever seen him before, it's like he was in a Halloween costume dressed as a Viking, like that happens. But the aggressiveness from Darnold is really apparent. That throw he made to Jordan Addison when Addison made that diving left-handed catch, that throw is absurd because Darnold was getting rushed. He was rolling out, and he had to throw it over multiple defenders into a very small window where only Addison could go get it. I tweeted, I was like, early in the game, Sam Darnold is playing like Sam Darnold. And then I retweeted myself and said, Sam Darnold is playing like Patrick Mahomes. That's the full Sam Darnold experience. That talent, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to do it for 4 quarters, for 17 games, and then in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. He might do it in spurts, though. And if he does it at the right time in a big game, the ceiling is much higher, in my opinion, than it would be with Kirk Cousins. Because Kirk and the Falcons are going to experience this. He's going to go up against a ferocious defense that's going to rush him, and he can't go anywhere. He's not going to be able to make those crazy throws that Sam Darnold might be able to do. We saw this in the playoffs against the Giants. Kirk's ceiling is very limited, and it's not a Super Bowl ceiling, in my opinion, unless you give him the Ravens or the Bucks early 2000s defense, or the 2015 Broncos when Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl, whatever year that was. I don't even remember, a long time ago. Darnold, though, man, as long as he doesn't make the stupid plays, the arm talent brings your ceiling so much higher. And that That should excite Vikings fans because I think we sit here and talk about this team like, oh, it's a transition year, probably not going to go that far, but the potential is there. It really is, and it wouldn't be there if Kirk was the quarterback.
No,
I think
yeah.
you're right that the ceiling. I think I agree with you that the ceiling might be higher. The floor is also lower,
Yes.
certainly. I would say. Um, I think Kirk, to his credit, I mean he's been playing really well recently. They've won 5 of their last 6 in Atlanta. They beat shorthanded Mike Zimmer defense on Sunday. That game, week 14, I think it is when the Falcons come here. That's obviously going to be quite fun to watch. And I just think, yeah, the Darnold athletic ability to get out of the pocket. And as we've said, a lot of times that can lead to sacks and negative plays, but also sometimes he makes it work and he scrambles and he finds somebody or he's able to run for a first down. And then obviously it's just the fact that he's making a quarter of what Cousins is making, so they have these other pieces on the roster that they wouldn't have if Kirk was still their quarterback necessarily. I know they're also paying Cousins a lot of dead money this year, but yeah, I agree with you. I think the Darnold ride, if it peaks at the right time, and O'Connell can continue to kind of work some of his magic with him and coach him up, and now all the weapons are here, and Hawkinson will get more and more involved. If they can just figure out some things on the interior offensive line, yeah, they've got a chance because of how good the pieces around Darnold are, because of Darnold's arm talent, and because of the defense that's going to get Blake Cashman back pretty soon.
So I've been putting off this topic a little bit in this video, but let's jump into it now. Another thing that can excite Vikings fans, trade deadline is tomorrow. I know it's a big day across the U.S. tomorrow, but also in football world, it's a massive day as well.
Is something else happening?
There might be. Some great planning by the NFL to coordinate this with the elections for sure. But let's talk about it. Vikings clearly coming in with not a whole lot of draft capital. They've already made one trade for Cam Robinson. That seemed to play out pretty well in the first game last night. Let's look at the defensive side, because I would assume you guys would both agree that defense needs more help than the offense at this point at the trade deadline. So what is the biggest defensive need for the Vikings at the trade deadline? Is it getting another cornerback? Is it getting another linebacker in there with Blake Cashman's injury issues? He should be back soon, though. But is it an interior defensive line? What do we expect, if anything, the Vikings to do at the trade deadline?
Yeah, the two that have really stood out for a while are defensive tackle and corner. The corners they had a rough time against the Lions and the Rams. I'd say they were a bit better in this Colts game against an offense that just isn't quite as dangerous. Byron Murphy had another interception. Stephon Gilmore, I think he had a pass interference call late in the game, but he was mostly solid. We'll see if they were going to go get a corner. I think it would be somebody where like a Greg Newsome or maybe J.C. Horn or somebody like that, where you can have them beyond this year and kind of maybe extend them and make them part of your future defensive core, because all 3 of the guys this year, Gilmore, Murphy, Shaq Griffin, they're pending free agents. So really you've got Mekhi Blackman coming back next year and then not much else planned at corner. The defensive tackle, I think, would be the even more pressing immediate need. They really struggle to get the interior pressure. Jerry Tillery is a journeyman. Jonathan Bullard's a journeyman who's mostly good against the run. Harrison Phillips is a quality nose tackle, but he's not much of a pass rusher. Jihad Ward, they just don't have a lot there. And you've noticed that at times when these quarterbacks can sit in the pocket, or maybe they can step up, because Jonathan Grenard feels like the only real threat to rush the passer at times. So I don't think that they're going to pull off some massive blockbuster for Dexter Lawrence or Jeffrey Simmons or somebody like that. But if you can get somebody in there, some kind of rental veteran with some proven ability to rush the passer from the interior at a higher level than like the Tillery Jihad Ward bar, I think that would be worth maybe giving up one of next year's 5th round picks or another 26 pick or something like that, just to kind of provide a little spark at that spot.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to come up with names, but I've seen like Detroit Lions writers saying, "Hey, the Lions got to go get Trey Hendrickson off the edge, to replace Aiden Hutchinson," and that brings me to B.J. Hill, defensive tackle for the Bengals, and I'm thinking these are guys whose names have come up earlier in the season, but the Bengals are roaring right now, and they're not going to deal anybody. They got to feel like they have a shot. They're 4-5, but they're right back in the thick of things in the AFC, and they're firing on all cylinders. I just don't see them trading any of their key players ahead of tomorrow's, I think it's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock trade deadline Central Time. So who's out there? There's a story on CBS this morning, Tennessee's Sebastian Joseph Day, 6'4", 310. I don't know what his contract situation is. I'm just looking it up right now, but that would be a nice player to add. And then, I don't know. Maybe Dallas says, hey, we're done. We agree with Dak Prescott, the lip reading. We effing suck on the sideline and their loss yesterday to the Falcons. Maybe they would trade Levi Onwuzurike. I think that's how you say his last name. That's probably incorrect, but he put up some great pass rush numbers as an inside rusher last season. Not so good this year, but you got to get something. You got to get something. Interior pressure is really lacking right now, and it's putting a ton of heat on Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner to do all of the work to put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And you ain't going to get many Joe Flacco experiences. This is the perfect time against Trevor Lawrence, against Mason Rudolph or Will Levis, whoever Tennessee starts, before you get down to the nitty-gritty later in the season against the likes of Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, Geno Smith, Jerry Goff again. You've got to go out and get some interior pass rush help. That's critical. And that would make the lives of the linebackers easier. And, of course, Minnesota's depth at safety. The middle. You've got to get the pressure up the middle. If you can go get Dexter Lawrence, give them whatever they want. I don't care. Give them next first-round picks. Go get them. This is your opportunity. You get a guy like that, and you are dangerous, man. They need
absolutely. Would you guys – does the win last night change your guys' opinion on using that first-round pick at the trade deadline this year? Would you go all in and use that first-round pick knowing that you've only got, 2 fifth-rounders in the upcoming draft then? Would you use that first-round pick tomorrow?
Absolutely. They've got comp picks. They've got some other pieces they could trade. We don't talk about this much, but I think, Will, you wrote about it. Like, why don't you trade Brian Asamoah and Caleb Evans, some of these guys who just aren't playing, that are still young, they're coming off their rookie deals, trade them away for a 7th-round pick. Just stockpile, take some flyers. It may not work out, but at least you have some ammo to use in next year's draft or the 2026 draft or whatever. But that first-round pick, at this rate, it's going to be late in the first round. Yes, you can get a good player on a rookie deal, which can help you, but you're in a position now with salary cap space next season because of J.J. McCarthy, and the Cousins dead money coming off the books, where that first-round pick, you can go out and sign guys for 5 years, and you don't have to worry about not having enough guys on rookie deals to really succeed and thrive in your championship window. So 100% deal that pick for somebody who's a stud who can help right now and in the long term.
Yeah, that's the point of it. If they were still paying Kirk Cousins or whoever, like paying top quarterback money, you have to hit on those first-round picks and get the cheap, controllable talent to build out your roster, because the Vikings after this year are going to have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract. They have a lot of cap space to supplement the roster around him. So I'm with you, Joe. I would move the first-round pick, assuming that it is, or as long as it is for somebody who is not just a rental and is somebody who you're going to be able to, maybe they're already under your control on a contract for a while, or somebody you can then extend and keep around for a while, and kind of a proven player at one of those spots on defense. I agree. I think it doesn't have to be viewed as like okay, we're going full Rams and it's just a win now move. Obviously, anybody you trade for will help you this season, but somebody who can then help in the JJ McCarthy window as well.
Yeah, I've been baffled by this, because ever since the Vikings got Cam Robinson last week, and I think that deal was reported on Tuesday, officialized on Wednesday, and he showed up on Thursday, played on Sunday. Ever since that trade went down, there's been nothing. It's crickets. There are no rumors. There's no steam on the Minnesota Vikings at the trade deadline. You see people, manufacturing ideas like, let's go out and get Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints. They just fired Dennis Allen, their head coach. They're gonna want to trade their star cornerback, but there's nothing of substance that's floating around. And we're coming up on 24 hours as we record this, 30 hours or so before the trade deadline hits. That's a little curious to me, and it's almost like it's too quiet. The Vikings maybe were waiting to see how they performed. If they had lost that game to the Colts, maybe they're like, okay, yeah, maybe we're not as good as we thought we were. But you won that game. You're 6-2. You're right there. Now start making calls, Kwesi, and get something done. I would think that's the mindset at TCO Performance Center this very moment.
I will just say I'll be surprised if the Vikings don't do anything else before 3 p.m. Central Time. And that's not me, a source report or anything. That is just me having covered this team for a while and knowing how much Kwesi Adofo-Mensah loves to pick up the phone and make trades, both in the offseason, in the season, during the draft, all that. He is not shy about wheeling and dealing, and I think he will recognize kind of the opportunity that the Vikings have here. And maybe it's just a minor move. It may not be a splash. The Cam Robinson thing might end up being the biggest deal the Vikings make, but I think we see something else. They've added a running back. They've added the emergency left tackle. I think we see something on the defensive side of the ball. That's just a speculative guess here, but we'll see.
All right, you got the speculative guess. I want bold predictions from each of you to close out the show. Who, 3 p.m. tomorrow Central Time, who is the newest Vikings via trade deadline?
Ooh, okay. That's tough.
It's tough because I feel like there's so many names out there that it'll be somebody we haven't even thought of.
That's why this is a bold prediction. You need to just come up with a name.
Well, the one I would say, yes. The one I would say is Greg Newsome. And maybe this is me trying to speak it into existence because Greg Newsome went to Northwestern. I'm a big fan of his. But I think the connection there, Kwesi was in the Cleveland front office when they drafted him. He's been a good player. He's young. He has a lot of upside long term. Browns aren't really going anywhere. I think the Vikings don't need a corner right now, but I think they do need one long term. I could see that happening, and then you've got some decisions to make of who you're playing right away. But Newsome would kind of become the guy for you moving forward at that spot.
I love that. That's really good. I'm going to agree with that, but then I'm going to give myself two chances here.
Okay.
Because I just had a vision of like the Vikings tweeting this out, and I could see him in purple and gold. And I know it's not likely, but I feel like you got to trust your gut. It's the animalistic instincts in all of us. We have them, right? Dexter Lawrence. They're gonna throw the house at the Giants for Dexter Lawrence. And if it's not him, it'll be J.C. Horn. Because he fits that first round pick required to get him, and then you extend him, and then you have help at cornerback long term. Yeah. That's certainly true because Stephon Gilmore and the pieces we have in Minnesota right now, they're not locked to be back next season. They definitely need cornerback health unless they think Blake McGlothern is Jesus Christ in football. And he might be. I don't know.
All right. I love those. I'm going to just throw this one out there. I'm going to steal this from our friend of the show, Matthew Caller, Dalvin Tomlinson. He suggested it a while ago. Bring back Dalvin Tomlinson back in purple. There's the connection with the Browns. And they're terrible this year.
Yeah, that one feels a little more like within the realistic ballpark. Although I just wonder how much he gives you pass rushing wise, and how much maybe crossover there is with him and Harrison Phillips.
Well, his PFF pass rush grade is 67, which is slightly above average, I think.
That'd be helpful on this team for sure.
Yeah.
Love it. Good stuff from you guys today. We'll talk to you back here on the channel tomorrow with another topic across Minnesota sports. Go read all of our work over at Vikings, Twins, Gophers, Badgers, and Timberwolves on SI as we continue to cover all things Minnesota sports. Hit subscribe on the channel. Does help us get found. Also lets you be notified every time we post a new video here on the channel. We'll talk to you tomorrow.